BWI Daily Edition with a special guest today. Very excited to have Jason Belzer on the show. He is, and I'm going to read this off from his Twitter bio because there's a lot of stuff this guy is involved with. He is a very busy man. Professor of Organizational Strategy at Rutgers, attorney representing coaches, founder of AD University and Athlete NIL. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So you've got a lot of hats. You wear a lot of hats, and I want to start right with Athletes NIL, which says it's the home of Success with Honor, which is the Penn State Collective. So let's start there. Success with Honor and the Penn State players and community, how is that and Athlete NIL, how are those connected?
Yeah, so it's Student-Athlete NIL specifically, and Student-Athlete NIL is the company that is currently operating Success with Honor, working with the group of donors who basically launched Success with Honor. So we run the day-to-day operations of the collective, everything from setting up the deals, activating them, working with the donors to raise money. So Kaylee Jackson, who obviously is not here, but she is a recent Penn State graduate. She is on the ground right now in State College working with the student athletes. We've run probably about a dozen events already throughout State College over the last 3.5 months since we launched. And that includes autograph signings that we had at the spring game. We had a whole bunch of activities a couple of weeks ago around the Letterman's weekend. We had 19 Penn State student athletes with us last week in Atlanta who were paid for by the collective. So right now, in terms of operational logistics, Penn State has more going on from an NIL perspective and a collective perspective than really 95% of the schools out there, which is, I think, testament to some of this work we've done, but also the support of the Penn State community and the money that we've been able to raise to work with student athletes.
So you're talking about specifically like events that application of resources going into setting up interactions and these events that you're talking about. So Penn State
application of resources as well as number of student athletes that have done deals. So any student athlete that works with Success with Honor, they contract directly with us. So we've had over 100 different student athletes from the school already do work with us in some capacity. And that's across probably 20 of the 31 sports, if not more, probably closer to 25.
What is your official role or what is your title within Success with Honor?
So I'm the CEO of Student-Athlete NIL. So in some ways, you can call me the GM of Success with Honor. That being said, Mark Toniatti, who is a donor, a longtime Penn State alumni supporter, and on a lot of boards at the university, he is the CEO of Success with Honor. But we are kind of like the GM. So the relationship that you can kind of think about is that we are almost like a Learfield, similar to what Penn State uses for their MMR rights, but we're focused on the NIL side. So you can kind of think of me as the general manager of Success with Honor. We work directly with the university. I'm having conversations, obviously, with donors, businesses, with the university itself, with their compliance department. We obviously communicate with coaches to understand some of the issues that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But yes, any deal that is happening at Penn State from an NIL perspective and the collective comes through me first, and then we go out and we execute on it.
Gotcha. So just from a broad perspective, you've mentioned doing more than about 95% of the collectives out there in college sports. So how has this process gone for you? How has the introduction of Success with Honor and then the application of it gone from the broad perspective of what your vision was to what's being done right now?
It's going very well. I mean, at the end of the day, I use that 95% number. What that means is that most collectives right now in college sports are focused primarily on football and men's basketball.
Right.
Whereas at Penn State, we focus on all sports. And the fact that we've worked with student athletes from, like I said, probably 25 of the 31 sports. And as an example, like men's wrestling at Penn State has more opportunities than any other wrestling program in the country, like bar none, guaranteed. We have raised substantial amounts of money. All the student athletes are engaging in some really cool opportunities. RBY has been at the school. He's doing a whole bunch of stuff. He was with us in Atlanta last week. We've done different things with Carter Staiachi and pretty much the entire team. Same thing on the football end, right? We've done stuff with Sean Clifford,
Right.
PJ. I think I have a list. We've worked with probably 35 or 40 of the football players at the school already, so almost half the roster. We were literally just on a call today with, I won't say who it is, you'll see, but one of the freshmen on the team, one of the Herald freshmen, we've just secured a deal with him with a major Pennsylvania corporation that we're going to finalize here over the next couple of weeks. And you're going to see him on billboards, when you're driving down the highway. And that was done through Success with Honor. So we know our capabilities. We're really the only company right now that exists that is professionally managing collectives at universities around the country. And so Penn State is in very, very good hands from that perspective. The key now is to continue to raise dollars. We launched a collective with about $500,000 in the bank. Since then, we've raised an additional $1 million plus, which is pretty substantial. But over the long run, for Penn State to want to compete at the level that it does, we need to continue to drive money into the collective.
Yeah, and I want to skip ahead for just 1 second because that is a very interesting topic, and that's one that I want to pick your brain about because you are professionally managing a collective, so you have more information than a lot of people. But when it comes to the marketplace, going back to something James Franklin said that sparked a whole conversation that's leading us here, is that the marketplace is dictating what he needs for his football program. But you mentioned GM. There's no salary cap. There's no public bookkeeping when it comes to NILs. So how can you accurately gauge an opaque market to know what you need to stay competitive, as you mentioned, for Penn State and their broad-based sports applications?
Well, there is market value, right? You can
Yeah.
assess market value, and we have a better idea of market value than pretty much any company out there because hopefully by the end of this year, we student athlete NIL will have done more direct deals with student athletes around the country than anyone in existence. So remember, we're not a marketplace, right? I'm not talking about like Open Doors or Influencer, where there's many companies. Us literally contracting with student athletes, we will probably have upwards of well over 1,000 student athletes that we've worked with. So we know what market rate is. And so if you ask me literally what a 5-star quarterback costs right now in the marketplace, I can give you a pretty good estimate on how that works. And so there is no salary cap. I think you can kind of think of NIL right now as Major League Baseball. Like you
Right.
can be the Yankees or you can be the Oakland A's. That's just what you determine, right? And so Ohio State they're the Yankees, right? And so Penn State needs to decide where they're going to compete across that spectrum. The one advantage that a school like Ohio State has is that they have Columbus, right? A lot of
Right.
big businesses, so they can drive money. On the flip side, though, I believe that Penn State can be equally competitive because of the size of the alumni base.
Right.
So if we can convert, there's 750,000 living alumni, 750,000 living alumni. If we can convert 1%, 1 to 5% of those individuals into paying members of the collective, we will be on equal footing with Ohio State. Just massive numbers. And so the short answer is yes. There's been numbers out there in terms of what Ryan Day has said, but to field a top 25 roster in college football, you're probably going to have to be paying out upwards of about $10 million a year minimum. If you're going to want to compete, you're going to have to be at that the $5 million base is the base level, but 5 to 15 is where the sweet spot is right now for a top 10 program.
So Penn State, in terms of that and success with honor, is on pace but needs to pick up. They need the donations need to increase. Where is the trajectory heading from where you are? I know you mentioned where you
We're in
are,
a
but
positive trajectory. We obviously launched in the middle of February, and people are still acclimating. I
mm-hmm.
think the real numbers we'll figure out as we get into the football season, because once we start really promoting the collective during football, that's where we're going to figure out how we can really, where our numbers are at, right? And if there's 107,000 people in the football stadium, can we get 10% of those individuals to give? So our average
That's
donation
what I
right
want
now,
for our channel here, by the way. Is just I just want 10% of them. Just give me 10,000 people watching the channel. So I'm with you on that.
right, right. But it's not a crazy number, right?
Yeah.
It's, there are 750,000 living alumni. Many of them support the football program. Our average subscriber, so we're not talking about like big donors, is in the area of like $35 a month. So just do the math, right? Like how many people do we need to get to be creating a base level of $5 million a year? And it's reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of these people are already giving to the university. They're already giving to the athletics department. They're buying season tickets. So there's a little bit of a dance going on right now with NIL, with schools trying to figure out, okay, maybe we're going to have to take a haircut on the development money that's coming into the program.
Yeah.
And maybe we're not going to have the shiny new locker rooms. But at the same time, we need to be able to fund NIL opportunities for our student athletes because that's the new marketplace.
Right. And I want to come back to that in just a minute, but the functionality of that, it's a third party that you're organizing, working with Penn State, but Penn State can't be directly involved in these deals. So is there any sort of, I don't want to say friction, but is there any sort of roadblock or issues where you can't be are you the official partner of Penn State, or is there any sort of imaging issue there when knowing how to direct people to this place to donate for the most effective dollars?
Yeah, so Penn State is a little bit hamstrung right now because of the rule in Pennsylvania regarding how much they can do from an NIL perspective. That being said, while we don't have an official partnership with the university, we are the preferred collective of the university. So they apprise us as being, if somebody says, "Hey, I want to do an NIL deal," they say, "Go to Success with Honor," and they'll handle it for you. That being said, we are official partners with a lot of schools, including Robert Morris, which is a small private Division I school in Pennsylvania. We actually have an official agreement with them, and so if you go to their website, you will see a link to their collective website that we run for them. But yes, there needs to be long run. There will be more cooperation between us and the university. And so we have we're a third party intermediary, right? So we have an arm's length relationship. So, Coach Franklin can't call me tomorrow and say, "I need you to give Sean Clifford $10 million," right? Like that's not how it works.
Right.
How it works is a donor calls us and says, and this happens all the time, like literally we are working on deals. Donors come and say, "Hey, we've pooled together X dollars. We want to go hire, this student athlete to do XYZ." And we go
Mm-hmm.
do that. And so just this month, I think we've already, distributed about $100,000 in deals for football. And that's not through the football program. That is donors coming in. I mentioned we just did this. We're about to do this deal with this company. A lot of them are businesses, brands. Some of them are individual deals. We have student athletes working camps this summer around the country.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of different things happening. So
From that perspective of talking about $100,000 to football this month, I think people look at going back to that number of $10 to $15 million for roster maintenance. I think they think of that as just a pool of money that's drawn from every year. But are you describing it as that money is available for them through sponsorships, or it is directly given to them as through donors? How does it, or is it a little of both? It seems
anything
a
that
little
a student
confusing.
athlete does for us, they have to earn those dollars, right?
Okay.
So if we have an appearance for them, um, they have to complete an opportunity for us. They have to do whatever that is, right? So autograph signing, they're getting paid whatever. They got paid $500, $1,000 during the spring football game to come and do an autograph signing for 2 hours. Those are the opportunities. So there's money sitting in a pool, and we are kind of deploying it. If you're asking me less about Penn State and more just like in terms of roster management and salary cap management, part of that is there are student athletes that we have at Penn State that are on retainers with us, meaning they're earning monthly dollars. And for that, they are doing various activities. So, as an example, they may have to go do an appearance for us on a monthly basis. And that appearance may be an alumni event, it may be working at a camp, it may be going to a business. We are actually going to be launching, we're literally working on it now, and I have a call in about an hour. We are going to be launching a business program in Center County as well as the state of Pennsylvania, where businesses are going to be able to subscribe to the collective. They'll pay a certain fee. There's going to be at different levels. So just like imagine, like maybe they pay $10,000 a year, and they automatically will have access to Penn State student athletes to do commercials for them, to do meet and greets, to do autograph signings, whatever it is, right? So, let's say it's champs in Penn State, they'll subscribe, they'll pay whatever it is, and they will then be able to call us and say, hey, this month I want, Sean Clifford or Roman Bravo Young to come and do an appearance at an event. And because of that subscription, they will have access to those individuals. So that's how we're going to scale it. If you think about it we haven't, before we were talking about alumni, right? So we haven't even talked about the business side. Think about, our business subscriptions are going to go over $10,000 a year. Think about how many businesses you maybe need 100 companies in Pennsylvania to put in 10,000 a year, and you're at 10 million like that, right? Yep. And so it's not crazy, right? It's absolutely not a crazy number, but somebody has to be able to manage that process.
Right, and Penn State has always leveraged the entire state. It's not like they're captured to just Center County. Philadelphia, there's a strong presence. Even if you extend outside of Philadelphia, in the region, Penn State, from a recruiting perspective, has done well in those areas, along the coast. So that
100%.
is, it's not just. I think there's a lot of focus on, okay, so Pitt is in Pittsburgh, Columbus, Ohio State, schools that have like USC being in one of the largest cities in America, if this has always been a thing of region versus location. One thing I want to get to, though, that I'm curious about, that kind of in the long run you see in other places like Miami, individual very wealthy donors creating a seismic shift at one school or another. And is there a concern, I guess, of on a large scale with wealthy donors on Success with Honor? It says you can donate to specific athletes, your favorite athletes, on the website. Is there an issue with too much power being condensed in certain collective or in certain places where you might have a de facto ownership group because these people donate so much money, they then have the power through NIL to affect things?
The short answer is that at Miami, there is a problem. At Penn State, there is no problem.
Okay.
You have John Ruiz, who's basically the Miami collective, and that's not sustainable because what happens tomorrow if John gets tired, he doesn't get his return on investment, his company goes bankrupt, he gets hit by a car, right? That's not a sustainable model. And that is the advantage of Penn State working, or us operating at Penn State more specifically, because if we can build a base of donors that are not dependent on one, but are dependent on the 100,000, then they never have to worry about that, right? And somebody can always come in and say, I'm going to give X amount of dollars to a student athlete, and that happens. I can guarantee you that there hasn't been one donor that has come in that has given more than, maybe $20,000-$30,000 to a particular athlete. So it's not like a lot of money, right? But that's a drop in the bucket. But if tomorrow Terry Pagula comes in and says, I want to give this kid $1 million, that's his prerogative, and we will execute that deal. And, but Coach Franklin doesn't have to abide, like Terry can say, I'm going to give this kid $1 million. Coach Franklin says, okay, great, but doesn't mean I'm going to start him as part of that. But there's still problems. And I can say openly, Terry Pagula has not donated to the collective yet. Mm-hmm. So there's still big opportunity there. That being said, Ira Lubert, who is the second largest donor to Penn State, is the chairman of Success with Honor. So he's obviously put in some substantial money into it. So it's an evolving process, but we feel really good. I think Penn Staters should feel good from an operational standpoint. But at the end of the day, if we don't have money coming in, we can't do anything, right? If there's no money, we're just sitting on our hands. If money comes in, then it works. And so we are getting there, right? It's great that we have well over $1 million in the bank. It's still nothing compared to what Penn State's going to need to compete with OSU and Michigan for Big Ten titles.
We're speaking with Jason Belzer. He's a lot of things. He's an expert on student-athlete NIL. He's a part of the Success with Honor. His company manages the operations for Success with Honor. We are looking at kind of a broad picture, and I just got a couple more questions here. We're looking at a broad picture in terms of a lot of evolving processes at different places. So there is an emphasis, it seems, in certain areas, as you might expect, on cash in hand over education, and as you pointed out, having work tied to the money you're given. Do you feel that this is a norm, or what do you think is going to win out in the end? Because you mentioned John Ruiz, that is an unsustainable model at Miami, but what do you think is the successful, what's going to come out of this kind of wild west of evolution right now?
I think NIL is only the beginning, and I think NIL may only be a temporary solution to what will happen down the road, which is where there will be some sort of revenue split with student athletes. Now, I think college athletics needs to avoid having student athletes be employees at all costs. And there can be a world where student athletes get a certain amount of dollars guaranteed to them without having to be employees. But is it foreseeable that, a student athlete comes to Penn State and the university just says, hey, don't even worry about NIL. We're going to buy out your NIL rights and we're going to guarantee you X amount of dollars. And that money maybe gets put into an escrow account. And once you graduate, you get that. Absolutely. Right. But that infrastructure is not there. We're still a long ways away from happening. And I think what we're building as a company, whether at Penn State or other institutions, will help facilitate that process if it ever comes. And if it doesn't, then we'll continue to operate how we're operating. I think, and I'm biased, but if you really studied our model, if we were currently operating at every university, there would be no problems, right? Like we would streamline the efficiency of the process. Different universities would, right? The market would correct itself.
Right.
Some schools would rise to the top, some wouldn't. Right now, there's institutions that have no operations or infrastructure for NIL. There's some like Penn State that have great infrastructure. But I can tell you factually, like we've had conversations with practically every Big Ten institution. As much as Ohio State and Michigan have money, they don't have the infrastructure. Penn State has the infrastructure, they don't have as much money. So it's going to take a little bit of time for all of this stuff to work out. And what's going to end up happening is the schools that have both the infrastructure and the money are going to win out. The schools that just have the money, like Miami, probably is not going to work. And infrastructure is going to go a lot further than money in the long run, because you're going to be able to be a lot more efficient in how you deploy those dollars.
So I know you can't think for other people, but there always is. There's a resistance to change in certain places. And as far as for Penn State fans, the term Success with Honor, the Success with Honor initiative, can you have Success with Honor and NIL? Are those two things cohabitable in your mind?
100%. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? I mean, why can't we do it the right way? And we're proud of that, right? Like, I think there's a lot to say that you know, your listeners probably don't know a lot about who I am. They do a quick Google search, they can find out a lot of information about me. I've been in this business for almost 20 years. I have a very good reputation. I think you're going to be very hard pressed to find anyone in college athletics or elsewhere that will say something poorly about me. And so to be able to work with a school like Penn State and to be able to work with a collective like Success with Honor and be able to say, we're going to do this the right way, I think speaks volumes to the opportunity. And our goal is to create a case study and to say, hey, Penn State is, if you want to figure out how to do it the right way, Penn State's the model, and let other people copy us. Now, that's good and great. At the end of the day, being imitated is fantastic, and it's a great form of flattery. But then we still have to be able to compete, right? Like,
right.
So
So
and we'll be ahead of the curve too, obviously, because we see how things work, and we can implement things on a dime once we see what works and what doesn't.
So for fans that now know more, maybe feel a little more comfortable about the situation, just quickly give where they can go donate. For people like Terry Pagula, known fan of the BWI Daily Edition, I hope.
Successwithhonor.com. You can go in there. You can subscribe anywhere between $10 to $500 a month. That gives you various benefits at each tier. You can also provide one-time donations directly to the site, or you can give us a call and we can have a conversation. But there's value, right? You're not just donating and your money goes into the ether and you get nothing for it, right? If you're giving money on a monthly basis, you're going to get access to exclusive events. We had multiple exclusive events this month. We're working on some really cool, fun stuff for the summer when school gets started. You'll get access to autographed gear. So you're getting benefits. It's not like you're just putting money in someone's pocket and never getting anything in return. And I think that's important, right? I mean, if you got kids, they want autographs, they want to be able to do those things. And $10, it matters. Like if everyone gave $10, we would be rocking and rolling. And to be honest with you, if everyone gave $10, if we would win a national championship in 2 years, because we would have a huge, war chest to be able to deploy. But every single one of those student athletes is going to go to work. They're going to be working their ass off to make that money. And that's what's important.
And you mentioned the benefits for the student athletes as well. The NIL Summit you mentioned a little bit earlier. 19 Penn State student athletes went down to the event, which I believe you organized yourself or had a large hand in organizing. So tell me about the event. What was it, and what was the goal from that said event?
Yeah, so the NIL Summit is an event that Student-Athlete NIL ran in Atlanta last week. We had over 300 student athletes from well over 100 different institutions around the country. Penn State had the largest delegation, 19 kids. Ohio State had about 8 kids. Michigan had, I think, 8 or 9. Schools, a lot of Power 5 institutions. It was an amazing event. We had over 30 different brands involved, WWE, Invesco, Wasserman, Meta. And these student athletes had 3 days of amazing professional development. They got to hear from great speakers like Tim Tebow and Triple H. We had the first ever NIL awards. Sedona Prince from Oregon won Female Athlete of the Year, and Trace Griffin from UCLA won Male Athlete of the Year. It was an incredible opportunity, and it's a great example of what Success with Honor is doing, because all those 19 kids went there. Success with Honor paid for it. 19 kids, 19 different sports, education. This was not, hey, go get paid to go play. This is, let me help you guys learn what you need to do to be able to be successful both in college and after.
Jason Belzer, he is the founder of AD University and Student-Athlete NIL. Success with Honor, all these things tied to the work he's doing. Thank you so much for your time and for giving us this important information about the new age of college athletics. So thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate you having me on.
That'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Make sure you subscribe, because just like Jason said, if 10% of you subscribe to the BWI Daily Edition, we can do so much more here on the channel. We'll have so many more interesting conversations like this one. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and to YouTube. We will be back tomorrow.